Provide. Thank you.
Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr Speaker, this notice of motion, as we've heard, is the process by which Parliament alters the appropriations for our officers of Parliament. In speaking to the notice of motion, I wish to address the increase in vote ombudsman. Clearly an increase is required. There is absolutely no question about that. But I want to speak about the reason why such a major increase is required. As we heard from our member on the committee that heard evidence on this particular matter, Darian Fenton, the request was for an additional 8 ombudsmen, funding for 8 ombudsmen. The committee came down with a recommendation of 6, I think, with Treasury being at the other end of the bargaining table, as it were, with an offer of only 4. I think that 4 would have been an insult to the requirements of the office, and I guess 6 is seen as a compromise. But I think to reflect on what Darian Fenton said, she, amongst others, have felt that we really ought to be thinking very carefully about what the pressure we're putting on the Office of the Ombudsman, because when we look at what she actually said in her last report, is that the financial restraints under which the office is operating and the pressures on its staff, she described them as acute. And what that means is that it will increasingly be unable to achieve its performance targets for resolving complaints. Now, I actually think that that's an incredibly serious indictment. We have the Office of the Ombudsman for very good reason. I think Marion Street gave a very good summary of why New Zealand is held in good standing internationally, because of these independent officers of Parliament who are able to scrutinise really on behalf of the people of New Zealand to ensure that the executive is held to account for the roles that it plays. Mr Speaker, Vote Ombudsman is funded on the basis of about 1,000 to 1,200 complaints being open and under action at any one time. However, it had over 1,700 open active cases at the end of June last year, so that's 1,700 at the end of June, and nearly 2,400 at the end of December. So within a 6-month period, the over-representation of open complaints under action in the Office of the Ombudsman doubled in 6 months. And what that means is that a lack of staff really meant that of those complaints, 465 requests for assistance remained unallocated at the 31st of December 2012. So, and it's not surprising given the extent of the increase. But when one looks or drills into those figures, what the Chief Ombudsman is saying is that they're anticipating more than 14,000 requests for assistance this year, an increase of 36% since June 2002 and about 65% over the 2 years since June 2011. And I think 2011 will have resonance with people in this House, certainly those of us from Canterbury, because we know what happened in 2011 and we know why this massive increase in the number of complaints going to the Ombudsman has occurred. Mr Speaker, I just want to put it on record that this is a direct result of the failure of the government to provide support to the people of Christchurch as they are forced to deal with EQC and SERA under the provisions of the Official Information Act. Instead of having a policy of complete transparency, instead of just saying, yes, we'll post that out to you, because of course EQC isn't emailing stuff at the moment for some reason, but instead of just saying, yes, we will provide you with the information that you want, when you want it, in a timely fashion, people are instructed to apply for information under the Official Information Act. This is what's clogging up the system. Instead of looking at the end of the problem, which is the amount of funding that has to go into the Office of the Ombudsman, for heaven's sake, why won't somebody say to the Minister responsible for the EQC and responsible for Canterbury earthquake recovery, sort out the problem at the front end? Deal with the people of Christchurch in a reasonable and fair fashion. Nobody's asking for special treatment. Nobody's asking for favours in Christchurch. All we're asking for is that people have access to the information that they need so that they can make decisions about their own lives. The Minister can say, I should calm down, and I would like to calm down with respect to this particular matter, but the trouble is that we have been arguing right from the very outset that people were going to require additional support. They would need support to deal with EQC. They would deal more particularly with support to deal with their insurers. But to get to their insurers, they have to get through EQC first. And when EQC say, as their default position, apply under the Official Information Act, then we end up with the snowballing effect in the Office of the Ombudsman. And that's why, and I do apologise if I sound like I'm a little bit disappointed, but I am very disappointed that, well, we have actually been asking for some advocacy support for the people of Christchurch for actually years now. It isn't just months, it isn't just weeks, it's years we've been asking the government to actually respond to the needs of the people. Mr. Speaker, instead of giving people the information that they want, EQC say you have to make an Official Information Act request. And I just want to give you a little example. Here's a friend of mine who actually thinks that the PMO, Fletcher's, who've got a contractor in to fix up her house, she actually thinks that they've charged EQC more than they should have had to have paid. And that's because she thinks that they've charged for things that they actually haven't done. So she contacts Fletcher, she contacts the PMO, EQR they call it, and she says to them, or she sends them an email, could you just let me know whether they charged for a Portaloo, because I know they didn't have one, and did they charge to do X, Y and Z, because I know they didn't do that. And the response that she got was, you will have to forward your request to EQC under the Official Information Act. Well, look, she's trying to save them some money. And I've heard case after case after case. I'm just using this as one example because there are these cases throughout where good, decent Christchurch residents are saying to EQC, we think you're being ripped off. We'd actually quite like to make sure that you're not. We actually know that that's good money that's being spent on our behalf to get our homes repaired in a timely fashion. They're offering to help, and what do they get in response? You'll have to make an application for that information under the Official Information Act. Wake up! Wake up, people. This is just so avoidable and preventable. Work with the people of Christchurch and they will work with you. Mr. Speaker, EQC has helpfully placed an Information Act request form on their online presence. And that means, but they've also had to say on there, at present your request may have a 3 to 4 month delay as EQC works through the significant demand for information of this type. Hello, again, wake up. The reason that the public are asking for this information is because they now know that it's publicly available. They know that it can be provided to them in a reasonable fashion. It means that more and more complaints end up in the Ombudsman's office when they don't need to be there. Mr. Speaker, this is all because the government has refused to meet the needs of Christchurch residents struggling with the complexity of the EQC insurance interface and also SERA as well. This could have been resolved if the government had taken up our offer of a collaborative solution, a triage system, an advocacy service, and lawyers who I know in Christchurch have offered on a pro bono basis in order to take some of those very, very detailed cases to the court. But, Mr. Speaker, the reason that I believe that this has been scaled back Mr Brownlee has scaled it back, and insurance advocacy service will be smaller than originally planned because apparently the need was no longer as great as it was. Well, Mr Speaker, it's still a month away. We know it's going to be much less than people need, and that's why the people of Christchurch have responded by setting up something completely different, which they will announce. But Mr Speaker, let's all work together and get a solution for this, because otherwise we'll be back here asking for more resources for the Office of the Ombudsman, because ultimately that will be where the buck stops.
The question is that the motion be filed. Clear, Karen?
Yes, thank you.